Champions League away days. Come on.
I get those goosebumps every time.
I just have to get the big fella off the bench.
Could this be their last chance now? In it comes, Monster to the post! He scored! The Honey Monster scored!
I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too numb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hind to throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me outside? I'm slipping low-key. I'm slipping low-key and hiding. My rider. I get those goosebumps every time. You come around, yeah. You ease my mind. You make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments. I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time. I need the hind.
Hello. We are back again. Welcome to Loaded Mag NUFC Champions League edition of Away Days. And it's the big one. PSG at home to is truly Newcastle United FC. And got the main man back with me. I was about to grab the old brandy blaze. I've not got one tonight.
You know, go on. I've still got me blaze.
Yeah, I'm letting the side down. But no, great to have you all, fella. And look, flying high after a fantastic result yesterday. How you feeling now, mate?
Good, mate. And do you know what? Backing up what I said yesterday, and some people may think I'm mad, and no doubt opposition fans will think I'm mad. But looking at the table, we're still in there. We are still in there. And I'm not going to say what I mean, but I think you all know what I mean. This league's wide open. This league is wide open, and we're currently 7 points off the top. And we've got a difficult December, which we've discussed. But if we can navigate ourselves through, Pete, like you said, get to the end of January, all of a sudden things are looking up. So for me, you know, the players will return. And yeah, I'm just looking forward. So really am. I think we're in a really good place considering the position we're in, squad wise, player wise. I think we're in a great position, and having the likes of Isaac and Bruno back is just brilliant. So yeah, I'm feeling positive.
Yeah, definitely. Great to have the main man Alexander Isaac back in the team, and bagging goals as he always does. 8 for this season in the Premier League. He is really turning it on. Great to have him back, and we're going to need him. But of course, got to say a huge welcome to everyone in the chat. Great to have you in there, Lisa, resident Spanner. I hope you are well as Yano in there as well. Connie, hope you're well, fella. Also Kendo, Jordan Tune for Life, of course, always in there. David Cook, along with them all too, and there's a few others. Nathan Page, another one. Kamal, great to see you. Mark Todd, right near the top. Great to have you in, and Saint as well. Would I there? I could continue on and on and on. Great to have you in there. Get your questions in for Lee, because we're about to bring him on now. Because of course, this is no away days if we don't have the opposition's view. And it's great to welcome back your Sky Sports Zone, Talk Sports Zone, PSG. Ultra, shall we say, Lee Davey. So welcome in. Lee, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing? I'm not an ultra. I am not.
As soon as I said it, I knew you would go, what? No,
I'm not an ultra. Absolutely not. Yeah, but no, thanks for having me, guys. Nice to see you all, and thanks for having me back on.
No, pleasure. Yeah, well, it was an interesting conversation the first time round when we did when we did the last away days, and we had JJ on as well, who came and joined in tag team with you from a PSG perspective, and it was, look, you were there, I was there, we all watched it. It was from a Newcastle perspective a sort of a truly fantastic game. So just we never got a chance to kind of get your thoughts on that. So, like, just before we get on this game and where things have moved since, just from your perspective, being in the away end at St. James's Park, what were your kind of overriding feelings?
Yeah, it was just it was kind of like a bit of a crazy day. It was a bit of a nightmare getting up there because, you know, I had friends that came over from Paris, and, you know, obviously the train, I think there was a train strike that day. So getting up there, it just forgot how long it is to get to Newcastle. It's a long old way. But you know what? We had the most fantastic trip. Everything about it was brilliant, apart from that 90-minute disaster from a PSG perspective. But you know, I've briefly spoke to you about it, Pete, since then, and I honestly believe is that Newcastle fully deserved that. It was comfortable. It was a stroll, and just being in the stadium again. A good buddy of mine that came from Paris. He's come to a few games in England. We've been to Man United, we've been to Liverpool, and he's never really been impressed with the atmospheres in English grounds, actually. But there was one moment just before kickoff where literally the whole of St. James's Park stood up. The flags were going. It was absolutely insane. And this is a guy that's, you know, been to games all over France, and, you know, some great atmospheres all around Europe. And he just looked at me and he just went, wow. It was like he like looked at me and smiled, got his phone out, you know, to literally send back to his friends. And even I was like, wow, this is insane. And I've got to be honest with you, the very early on, I got a feel for how the game was going to go. And it was a strange one. You just felt as though this was Newcastle's night very, very early on. Then we're not going to lose. In fact, they could have played anyone that night and they'd have won. It was like the whole emotion surrounding the return to the Champions League, you know, the whole kind of, you know, not being in the Champions League for 20 years, that first home game, and they would have swept anyone aside that night. It was one of those nights where, okay, you know, and we know that Newcastle went on to lose to Dortmund in the second home game, but if they'd played Dortmund that night, they'd have beat Dortmund that night. Whatever was going to happen that night, Newcastle were going to win that game. And it was just incredibly comfortable from Newcastle. And I've got to say as well, I have to say, I don't even think Newcastle played fantastically well that night. They didn't have to. They were that dominant that I've seen Newcastle play multiple times this season, and I've seen them play much better than they did that night. But they didn't have to even get into really third gear that much, because what they did is they hurried, they pressed, they forced errors, they were aggressive, and they just picked Paris Saint-Germain off, and it was simple. And it was so comfortable. So that's a compliment, by the way, because Newcastle got 2 or 3 more gears to go into, you know? So that's a massive compliment. And the way they just kind of saw PSG off, it was like, okay, that you know, all you could do is take your hat off and applaud. It was a wonderful night for Newcastle, really wonderful night.
Yeah, it was. It's a special night, one of those iconic nights that most Newcastle fans had sort of dreamed of, and it really was. But look, things have obviously have taken a turn. Certainly in the Champions League, I'll drop it up now. The league doesn't look as good a reading as it did on that night when we're sitting top of the group. At the moment in this time, it's now the other way round, and Dortmund are at the top of the group. Newcastle are fourth. But just from, and look, we were kind of already having this conversation before we went live. I know you were kind of Chris were having this conversation, and Chris, I'll sort of bring you in here to get your thoughts on this as well. But you know, how do you see in these next 2 games things panning out, Lee, from a Newcastle point of view, but also from a PSG point of view? Because look, Chris, and I'll get you to kind of talk about it as well. One thing that you mentioned is that like it's still wide open.
Is it? Are you coming to me first or Lee? Sorry,
I was going to get Lee's perspective first.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think Luis Enrique said it best when the draw was made, and he said this group is going to the final kick of the final game in the group, and it looks like he's going to be right, doesn't it? You've got nobody's pulling away. Nobody's got any consistency. Has anybody won? I think Dortmund are the only team that have won away from home, right? At Newcastle, that's the only away win in the group.
Wow.
So if you think about it, that's just how vital how vital home form really is, which plays us into this week's fixtures, doesn't it? Which is absolutely crucial. Now, I don't think this is how the group's going to end, the way in which what looks on the screen now. I think there's going to be plenty of movers throughout the 90 minutes on Tuesday. And then obviously on the 13th of December, the final group games again, there's going to be movers and shakers. It's going to be crazy, this group. This is a really abnormal group. It's not the type of group you ever see in the Champions League group stage. But it's really intriguing and really enticing. And look, this is anybody's to win. Anybody could go into the Europa League and anybody could fall out of Europe completely. So this is still very, very much wide open. But I think we'll start to get a feel for how things are going to shape up after Tuesday's game, which is obviously the fifth match day. So it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, like I said, you had kind of your opinions on this. Just tell us from a Newcastle perspective where you kind of see it in this group. Are you with Lee, or have you got slightly different stance on it?
Yeah, no, I do agree with Lee. I think it could end up in any way. What I would say, with my betting head on, is that I would be hard pressed to back against Dortmund and PSG going through. Just out of interest, boys, because I haven't checked. Are Dortmund at home against AC Milan? Or
no, it's in Milan.
Oh, wow. So
it's really open, this one.
It's so wide
really
open, isn't it, Lee?
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, Jonathan Casey, before I put in my comments, I thought Jonathan Casey made a great shout. He said a draw at PSG and a win versus Milan, and we're almost certainly through. Milan would be out, and PSG would need to win at Dortmund, and Dortmund win in Milan for us not to go through. So it's like,
my goodness,
that just shows you itself. Exactly, that just shows you itself kind of where we are. It's like everywhere. I mean, the only thing for me is, and Lee, as Pete alluded to, me and Lee were talking before the show about, you know, what's important to Newcastle, and I never thought I'd hear myself say this, but I think Lee put it really eloquently when he was saying, you know, Newcastle do kind of have some bigger fish to fry, and we spoke about it earlier on in the show. In that, for me, you know, the Premier League's wide open. I think we're 7 points off top, and there's some big games coming up, not just for Newcastle but for everybody. And this could end up being like one of the the most open Premier League seasons that we've had. And part of me is thinking, you know, for consistency and to ensure that trajectory, which Lee was talking about earlier, happens for Newcastle. So really, you could argue that, and Pete, I think I'm saying this now, Pete, I think you said this on the end of the last show, that for you now, it was the Chelsea reaction show when you were saying, like, you hold the Man United game at the weekends, you know, in a higher priority than this PSG game, and that's not downplaying the PSG game, but it's gonna be a difficult night on Tuesday. It's gonna be a very, very difficult night. I mean, obviously, you know, we can take heart from that performance at St. James's, where, you know, Lee's right, Newcastle fully deserved the win, and we can go out there and we can put out a performance. And if we do, God, I mean, imagine the group then. If Newcastle win the game against Paris Saint-Germain, and I don't know, say Dortmund and Milan ends up a draw, the group it will go, like Luis Enrique said, it will go to the last game. But yeah, what in terms of what will happen, Pete? Who knows? And I know that sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but I genuinely couldn't call it because we won so emphatically at St. James's. The players will have that belief. They'll know they can go to the Parc de France and do something. They know they can. But it's whether or not, you know, they've got the energy, whether or not, you know, we've got the personnel to do it. Who knows? But all I know is I think Tuesday night's going to be a big night, not just for PSG but also for Newcastle.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I've been honest. I said to you, Chris, and after one of the shows, honestly, we've got PSG at the Park, and then we've got Man United at St. James's Park at the weekend. Like, if you're asking me where I want my 3 points, if we could only have 3 points, I'm taking them off Man United. I'm being deadly honest because, honestly, you've just seen the results today. Aston Villa beating Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They're now sitting fourth in the league. There's no reason. How many points are we off them? I think we're like 6 points off them, 6 or 7 points off Villa, who were in fourth spot with the injuries that we've had. with the type of ravage injuries that we've had to navigate ourselves through and still get 3 points after 3 points. We're 5 points off Villa, sorry, so we're even closer than I thought. That's bang open, 110%. And we've still got big players missing. And so for me, I'm not saying that I'm not saying I'm putting that as a sidewinder, but I know where the priority is. And look, the party is not an easy place to go to. When they want to light it up, they will light it up. And you know, people like Mbappe and all the rest of it, they will try and turn it on. So we will have to play differently, is what I'm trying to say, to get something at PSG. Now, I don't know what PSG are likely at the park when a team kind of sets up to be more of a counter-attacking threat. Have they, under Luis Enrique, been able to navigate that against different teams, or is there a particular style that Luis Enrique really kind of struggles to navigate his PSG team against?
PSG are giving up a lot of chances and giving away lots of goals, silly goals. I think that Newcastle present PSG with their worst nightmare. Just their aggression, the way they press so high, that is PSG's worst nightmare. And I'll tell you the reasons why. It's because PSG, for the last few seasons under Mauricio Pochettino, under Christophe Galtier, have been a counter-attacking team. Now they're a possession-based team, and they're in the very early stages of learning how to play this style. What you seen yesterday, the Man City-Liverpool game, where they were doing the same thing, and Alisson, you know, was poor in his distribution. They were on the back foot, conceded the goal to Haaland. It's very much, you know, what PSG are going through at the moment. So this whole new kind of possession-based football, start from the goalkeeper, draw the attacker in, get past the attacker. Now you're 11 against 10. Because you took one guy out. So that kind of building from the back thing, PSG was still in the early stages. Now, they can get away with it to a point in Ligue 1, but that game at St. James's was very early on. You see Donnarumma, he'd roll it out to Marquinhos, or he'd roll it out to Hernandez or Skriniar, and they're under pressure straight away. Gordon bearing down, Isak, Almiron, and you could see early on, you're like, my goodness, it's not going to be long. It's not going to be long. Forcing those errors. If Newcastle do that again, they've got a great chance. I believe Newcastle will score at the park. I really, really do. I can see Newcastle scoring. But it's going to be a very, very different game because PSG are going to bring something completely different. Now, at that time of the first game, which, you know, they were probably 6 weeks into playing that kind of system. Now, we're a little bit further in. We're a further 8 weeks since that game. And PSG are starting to really adapt to this way of playing. Now, yeah, are there mistakes? Of course. You know, can Newcastle get at PSG? Excuse me, and force more mistakes again? Absolutely. So, yes, I absolutely think that front three, which I expect probably to be Isak, Almiron, Gordon, that's who I would expect to be the front three tomorrow. I'm not sure there's anyone else to play there, is there, at the moment? But anyway, still, I expect that to be, they could be a real handful if they press as aggressively as they did first time round. And obviously that midfield, that real combative style, Joe Linton, you know, really, really aggressive in that midfield area. It's going to be tough for PSG. It's going to be really, really tough game if Newcastle bring what they brought on Saturday against Chelsea. I watched the game again. You know, really made Chelsea uncomfortable. Forget the sending off. Newcastle were already well away with that. So yeah, this is the worst game for PSG. This is the worst possible game. It's the worst possible opponent.
It's going to be interesting, really interesting now, and I really like kind of like the breakdown on that league with regards to PSG and what they like and what they don't like, because I think this is what we love to do on away days, is have those conversations on how we see the game going. Because I know for a fact, me and Chris, that when we're watching the game, if that happens, we'll be referring back to this, and this is what it's all about. So that's going to be really interesting. And I think our lineup, Chris, when we get to it, is going to tell us a little bit more. Got to give the wife a shout out. Not only has she just gone to the shop and grabbed some brandy, and I didn't think I'd be everyone tonight, but brandy and Blaze back in the house. Cheers to you all. Brilliant stuff. I want to talk players. Like, will it be? Look, I don't want to get into start lineup because we'll look at the lineups in a second. But are there any players coming back for you at PSG? Are there any players that are injured since then? Or is there anyone to kind of worry us or give us some confidence about?
There'll be definitely a different Kylian Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe just entered his worst run of form of the season, which came I think it started the game at Clermont, which was 4 days before the trip to St. James's, and even beyond that, I think he won about 3 or 4 games. I think about 4 games about a goal, and that kind of ran straight through that period of the Newcastle game. But they came back, they bounced back. I think it was against Rennes the following Sunday, and since then they've just scored and scored and scored. And they've been, apart from that blip at AC Milan, which wasn't really great, wasn't a great performance. They've actually been really solid. They've been really solid, very prolific. I think from the first game, obviously PSG have been missing Warren Zaire-Emery, which is one of the very few people that came out of that game with any credit, really. Marquinhos is another one who's injured. But the interesting thing about Marquinhos is that he's not overly missed in the team, which is strange when you see club captain. Yeah. It's a strange one. It is, which stops. He's picked up a thigh injury away with Brazil last week, and the situation with him is that it's not serious. He's still training. He's training alone, but he'll be back. I think it was 10 days of individual training or so, and then he'll be back in full training. So it's not a serious one, but he just won't make Wednesday's game, and he missed obviously Friday's game against Monaco. So they're the 2 big misses really, is Warren Zaire-Emery and Marquinhos. More Zaire-Emery because he's been a real kind of constant, and he's just been absolutely insane. He's been tremendous this season. But PSG will just have to cope with it because Newcastle had a few injuries the first time around, the first game, and wiped the floor with PSG. So ultimately, got to get on with it. As Newcastle have been getting on with it, that's just the way it is. I think the difference this time round, guys, will be Luis Enrique won't go about. What's the best way of putting this? Shuffling his team around and trialing formations in the Champions League game. He went with a 4-2-4 at St. James's Park, which was absolutely, people couldn't believe it. It's just not what you do at St. James's Park. So I think, that was a really silly move. And, seeing PSG lose 4-1 there was of no surprise when you look at the team, because it was unbalanced. It was completely unbalanced. So that won't happen again. He's never done that since. So I expect it to be a 4-3-3. It will go for this time. I don't think he'll make that same mistake. And it'll be an interesting one. There, because I think that Mbappe's in good form. Dembele's in good form. At the moment, midfield-wise, Vitinha's scoring great goals. But the only thing that worries me, really, is the defending. PSG's defending. They give up too many chances, and Newcastle already shown that give one chance, give one opportunity, and you'll be punished. So they're going to have to defend better than they've defended at any point this season. They really, really are. So that's always a question mark, is PSG's defending. But going forward, PSG will score goals on Tuesday night. There's no doubt about it. They're very prolific at the moment, and they will score goals.
Chris, from your perspective, obviously we had the news that we talked about Isak was back, and that was great news. But we've also had the news that Joe Willock has had a reoccurrence of his Achilles injury, which is why he didn't play on Saturday against Chelsea. And it looks like he could be out for a number of weeks. A real big blow. Since he come back, he's really made a big sort of a big difference to this team, as we thought. But from your perspective, what are you sort of worried about from a Newcastle perspective? Thinking about not necessarily telling us your predicted lineup, but just thinking about the threats that Lee's just talked about that PSG kind of posed to us.
I mean, as soon as Lee said that, Mbappe's now back in form, that worried me just alone. We were all worried about Kylian Mbappe anyway. Obviously, one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world. So going to his own stomping ground is never something that you're looking forward to. And obviously, no disrespect you know, when you've got a centre back pairing of Jamal Lascelles and Fabian Schär up against one of the best, it does worry you a touch. As magnificent as Schär and Lascelles have been recently. So yeah, obviously that worries me. Having the club captain out in Marquinhos, that's obviously a little bit more pleasing. But on the day, PSG are a fantastic side, and you know, when you're playing away from home, and the atmosphere is going to be fantastic, it is a concern. All over the pitch, they've got quality all over the pitch. So I am a little bit nervous, but at the same time, I'm kind of looking at it and thinking, you know what? It's just another game under these players' belts. There's going to be a lot of youngsters out there who will have only played a handful of senior games, let alone Champions League games, and it's only going to help us going forward. So it's an experience. It's great for the lads to go out there and try and put on a performance, but it's going to be tough, no doubt. And when you're losing a player in the ilk of Joe Willock, that doesn't help. Even if Joe Willock wasn't to start, to have someone like him on the bench to come on and influence the game, it's invaluable. And the fact that he's out is a big miss.
Definitely. People in the chat, if you haven't put your questions in for Lee, all things PSG, anything Newcastle related as well, drop them in there too. Make sure you get your questions in, and we'll make sure we star them so you are aware. Now, we'll get into the game, talk about the game a little bit more, and there's only one way we do that, and that's with a few stats. We'll go with a thriller this time.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize your neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stench is in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver, for no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
And like magic, he appears. Good evening, Keith. I don't think many people have forgotten about your prediction for the Chelsea game, so you might get reminded of that as the show goes on. But great to have you on and join us for the Champions League away days. And what stats have you got for us this week as we prepare for PSG?
I've got a load of stats here. I've got some stats on PSG's record in the Champions League. Stats on the European honours, their history there. Record against English teams, like Newcastle's record against French teams, a little bit on both the managers as well, in terms of how they've performed.
Keith,
as well.
We could just do the stats on the first leg game if you want.
Absolutely. I'm happy. These will be a bit of an update on those. A little bit on goalkeepers, a little bit on Newcastle players as well, a bit on Mbappe focus tonight, and also as well 1 or 2 home stats on PSG as well in the Parc des Princes record as well, because that's going to be crucial in this fixture, with St. James's Park being crucial in the last fixture. So some of these stats are going to be slightly updated from the first leg. Okay. Paris Saint-Germain record in the European competitions, played 267 games, 140, drawn 60 and lost 67. The European honours, 1 UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, 1 Intertoto Cup. They've also been a Champions League finalist. They've been a Super Cup finalist. They've been a Cup Winners' Cup finalist as well, with back-to-back finals, as well as their Cup Winners' Cup win in the 90s. Record against English teams in European competition, played 28 games, won 8, drawn 8, and lost 12. Newcastle's record against French teams in European competitions, they have played 14, they've won 4, drawn 4, and lost 6. Luis Enrique, he's managed 4 seasons in European competitions, 3 in the Champions League. He's managed Barcelona and AS Roma as well as PSG. Managed 83 games, won 51, drawn 13, and lost 19. And he's won the Champions League, UEFA Super Cup, and the FIFA Club World Cup when he was with Barcelona. And as a player famously mentioned on the last call earlier in the season, he scored for Barcelona as a player in Newcastle's 3-2 win in the Champions League back in 1997. And anyhow, now his record in European competitions as a manager, he's managed 4 games, he's won 1, that big win against PSG, drawn 1 and lost 2. Moving on to the goalkeepers, Gianluigi Donnarumma. He's has 6 clean sheets for PSG this season in Ligue 1, and he has 2 clean sheets in the Champions League as well. And Nick Pope, he's got 5 clean sheets in the Premier League this season and 1 clean sheet in the Champions League for Newcastle. Moving on to players, Kylian Mbappe, he's scored 42 goals in 65 games in the Champions League, including 6 goals for Monaco and 36 goals for PSG. And he's scored 5 goals in 11 games against English clubs in the Champions League, scoring against Liverpool, Man City, and Man United, but not against Newcastle yet. And he's also scored 16 goals in 16 games, and he's got 2 goal scoring assists as well for Paris this season. Overall, he scored a phenomenal 228 goals in 276 games in just over 5 seasons for PSG. Ousmane Dembele, he scored 10 goals in 50 games in European competitions, including 8 goals in 36 Champions League games for Barcelona. And he recently scored his first goal as well for Paris in 12 games this season. Randal Kolo Muani, he's scored 4 goals as well in 10 games for PSG this season. At 17 years and 208 days, Lewis Miley became the youngest player to assist a Premier League goal for Newcastle. And that's the youngest in the league since Jonathan Lecco, 17 years and 153 days when he assisted for West Brom against Stoke in September 2016. Some general stats to round off. There's only been 1 defeat for Paris Saint-Germain at home this season. That was a 3-2 loss against Nice. So that's 7 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat. And under the Qatar ownership, Paris Saint-Germain have only ever lost 1 Champions League group game. And that was 2-1 loss to Manchester United when Marcus Rashford scored. But that was during the pandemic. So putting that in a context, in October 2020, there would have been no fans. So there would have been none of that normal atmosphere that there is used to in the Parc des Princes. And that rounds off the stats for tonight.
Great stats as always, Keith. Great rounded stats. Appreciate that, and some updated stats as well. Obviously, as the games have ran on thick and fast, we'll definitely be keeping some of them in mind as the game kicks off on Tuesday evening. Now, I've got a question for you all, and for everyone in the chat as well. Put your answers in of what you think about this. What is better for Newcastle United this season? Qualifying for the last stage of the Champions League or qualifying for the Europa League? That's the question I've got for you. Let us know your responses. I'll come back to that question, and I want to get all of yours on the panel's opinions on that, Chris, Lee, Keith, and we'll come back to that later on in the show. So what do you think is better for Newcastle United this season? Qualifying for the next round of the Champions League or qualifying for the Europa League, the latter stages of the Europa League? Just a question that I wanted to put out there for you all. But what I want to do now is talk about the game, and I want to have a look at the tactics board, because on the tactics board, if it's here, yeah, it is. I'll just find it 1 second. I would like, Lee, for you to pick who you think may well start for PSG in this game. So hopefully you can see the screen now.
Yeah.
Who is your PSG 11 that's going to start at the pot?
Okay, so excuse me. So in goal is going to be Donnarumma.
Okay,
that's a given. I think they'll go with the back four of starting with left back. They'll go with Mukiele.
Yes.
Just to the right of Mukiele will be Lucas Hernandez. He will deputise in that position for Marquinhos. Lucas has been playing left back majority of the season. Obviously scored at the Park. You remember.
Yeah.
He will be partnered by Skriniar. And then
What's
right
got for you this season? How's Skriniar got for you? He was a free transfer, wasn't he, from Inter?
Free transfer. He's been good in patches. He gets found once, and he's obviously lacks pace. And in Ligue 1, there's a lot of young, pacey players, so he can be found out in that situation. So potential for like an Alexander Isak would if he gets on his shoulder, plays on his shoulder, or gets half a yard, he'll be away. He'll be away. Right back will be obviously Hakimi.
Yeah.
I think in midfield he will go for Ugarte. And obviously with Warren Zaire-Emery not available, I think he will go with Fabian Ruiz.
Right or left?
I'd actually put him alongside Ugarte, actually. They both kind of play similar roles to a point. And then just in front there, now this is a toss-up between Vitinha and Lee Kang-in.
Because Vitinha came on as a sub. Kang-in has played quite a bit of football for you this season, hasn't he?
No, he hasn't actually. He hasn't. He got injured, and then he got called up for the Asian Games. And he got all the way to the final of that, won it, and literally he started playing. I think it was after he made his debut after the October international break, so he's barely played. He did, and then obviously Friday night he just flew back from Korea, and it's been very stop-start. But when he has played, he's been sensational. I'm going to go with Vitinha though. I think he might go Vitinha. It's a toss-up between the two, but I'm going to go Vitinha on this one. Yeah, probably around there. Yeah, that'd be fine. Obviously Mbappe will play off the left.
Yeah.
I mean, again, another toss-up here between Ramos and Kolo Muani. I'd personally go for Ramos, but I think he'll go Kolo Muani on this one. I think it might be Kolo Muani. We'll start this one. And then on the opposite side will be Dembele. Ousmane Dembele on the opposite side. So I think that's how PSG will line up. They'll, as I said to you before, made the big mistake of playing 4-2-4 last time, playing Ramos and Kolo Muani. It was just, too easy for Newcastle to really win that midfield battle. So I don't think that will happen again. That's a team I expect them to go with.
Just a few questions before I come to Chris for his prediction on the lineup and for Keith to critique it. Hugo Ekitike, he's actually been linked with Newcastle again recently. Our need to make signings and all the rest of it. It's been an interesting one. The link, has he even featured for you this season? And what do you think of his potential links? Is he going to move in January? Not necessarily.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he's been frozen out at PSG. I don't think he's been treated very well by the club at all. That's my stance on it. I know fans are very split on it. I actually feel very sorry for him in terms of the way he's been treated. I've been on this show plenty of times, and that when he was linked with Newcastle, I told you at the time that I felt that PSG wasn't the right move for him. I told you at the time that he should have gone to Newcastle, and it's obviously worked out that way. I do think he'll go because he's a talented player. I know Thierry Henry is wants him for the French under-21s, and obviously he's Thierry a coach for those that don't know, and he's not playing any football, which is really sad because I don't think he deserves that treatment. And I think he'll leave. I know Palace are interested. West Ham are searching for a striker, and I know they've been interested, but I know they're also looking at Solanke at Bournemouth. But there is an opportunity, obviously, for him to go to Newcastle, from what we read. Potentially that could happen. I think it'll be a pretty straightforward deal to do. He obviously wants to leave. PSG, have no interest in retaining him. They want him gone. But I expect him to leave in January. I expect him also to go to the Premier League.
Interesting. Just a couple of other players really to talk about. Marco Asensio from Real Madrid. Is he injured at the moment, or is he just not getting minutes? Because I know he came off the bench a few times earlier on in the season, and then not really seen too much of him since.
Yeah, so Marco Asensio has actually been the surprise of the season. He started the campaign so well, brilliantly. Scored a couple of goals scored a goal at Lyon. I think he scored the game before that. So he's got 2 or 3 goals to his name. I think he's got a couple. He's not played for a while because he got injured. He got injured in September's international duty with Spain, and then he was expected to return in October, and he didn't. Now he literally returned to the substitutes bench on Friday night. So he's been out since early September, injured. So that's why you haven't seen him. That's why no one's seen him. But it's been a real shame because his link up with Mbappe has just been one of those like real delight. Something, one of those real unexpected things, and you're just like, wow, this guy's actually he's pretty good. He's doing all right. He's doing okay for PSG. And then he got injured, which was really sad because he'd really built some momentum. So he's back. He's on the bench. He didn't get on against Monaco on Friday night, but I could see him being on the bench, certainly. And his experience, he's won countless Champions Leagues and countless titles with Real Madrid. So that kind of, that kind of experience is vital for PSG. So, yeah, he could feature. We'll see how the game goes. But I think it's going to be a case of easing back in now, as we move into this real kind of this festive season, which is obviously jam-packed full of games. He could come on as a substitute, but he is back on the bench, which is great news.
Not great news for us, that's for sure. Typically, he has to come back fit just before Newcastle comes to town. But Chris,
I could say the same about Isak.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that is true. If we need him, we haven't got to recognise.
That's very true. It's very true. Very true.
No, that's very. To be fair, yeah, we could say that about a number of players. But Chris, you've got the great old task of picking an 11 that's going to be travelling to the pot on Tuesday. What are you going for? And the question I was going to ask you, and I waited till now, is that what do you think once you've given me your 11? I want you to tell me what do you think Newcastle's approach will be to this game. So just think, keep that in the back of your mind. Like how do you think Eddie Howe is going to approach this game? But look, we'll revisit that in a second. What are you going for, fella?
Do you know what? I just wish we had more options, because I think if we had more options, my lineup would probably surprise people a bit more. But anyway, I'll put the 11 in, and then I'll tell you what I think. So I think it's going to be Pope in goal.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Livramento left back.
There's Tino. Lee, just really quickly, sorry, Chris. Lee, what have you made of Tino Livramento from what you've seen?
Yeah, he's done well. He's come in. He's certainly not afraid of the challenge of playing Champions League football. Obviously he's relatively inexperienced. He's kind of been drafted in, for injuries really. And I think he's made a really good impression on the team. He's fielding really, really well. Thought he did okay in Dortmund. I know it wasn't a great performance overall, but I actually thought he did okay in Dortmund. It was a big task for him to kind of be thrown into such a huge game. And, when I've seen him play, I think he's been pretty good. I think that could end up being a really solid signing.
Yeah.
Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, no, so mate. So left centre back will be Fabian Schär.
Fabian Schär. Left centre back, go for it.
Right centre back will be Jamal Lascelles,
Yeah, so
and right back will be Kieran Trippier.
Trips.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the midfield, I think, even though they do interchange, I think it will be. Can't believe I'm saying this. I think number 6. I think number 6 is going to be Lewis Miley.
Okay. The youngster,
Yeah.
the 17-year-old that pocketed Enzo Fernandez at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's honestly, so many people are talking about him outside of Newcastle United.
Brilliant.
Talk about how good he is. I'll come to you in a second, Lee. I don't know how much you've seen of him, but I had Potts and all the rest of them messaging me saying Lewis Miley, like he looks a talent. And I said it to them at the beginning of the season. They didn't listen to me, and now they are. So yes. They're now listening to the Newcastle United fans when we talk about our players, and they sit up and take notice of us, which is good. Crack on, mate.
Yeah, I think right centre mid will be Bruno.
Rice.
I think, yeah, again, that I'll leave that to my answer at the end. Left centre mid will be Joe Linton.
Big Joe.
And then I'm expecting Anthony Gordon on the left.
Yeah.
Alexander Isak through the middle.
Okay.
And Miggy Almiron on the right. And to answer your question, Pete, the best expression I can use for this, I think Eddie Howe will go shit or bust. I think he will just say, listen, boys, you've done it before. Go out again like you did last time. Pressing, high line, ask questions of PSG. If we sit in and say to PSG, break us down, I think we're in trouble. I think we're in big trouble because I think PSG will pick us off. And I think we need to go out there and really kind of shake them to the core. I think we need to go out and have that attitude. And you know what? If we get beat, we get beat. But we've got to go there giving it a go. That's certainly how I would approach it because, yes, a draw would be good. But if we get ourselves 1-0 in front like we did early on in the last game, and then, I think PSG heads could go down. If we can nick a second, who knows? But what I do know is if we go out there and we sit back and go, come and break us down and go there for a 0-0 draw, I think that's the totally wrong approach because I think they will pick us off. And as soon as they score and it goes 1-0, it's an uphill battle then. The best we could hope for is a draw probably at that point. So for me, the first goal is going to be key. And I hope it's us that gets it. But I think that will be from us being brave and really going up.
Okay. Keith, I'm going to let you critique Newcastle's team. Any changes you'd make? Any players you'd swap around for the 11 that Chris has gone with? Or are you in full agreement with that?
Yeah. I would love to critique this. I would love to come up with so many other different options, but we're just not in that boat or in that position at the minute. It's probably your back four is probably as strong as it's going to get there. That's for sure with Trippier and Livramento. Certainly Livramento's pace as well there on the other side. That's in some way, I think Livramento will be in there rather than Burn, because despite Burn being, impressive as a rock over the years, there has been that concern over the pace. So having Livramento in there is probably the best. I think your middle of the park as well, Miley as well. What a revelation that was just yesterday. So I think he has to be in the team for sure.
Keith, do you think there's any possibility? Obviously, looking at the bottom there, and obviously we saw against Chelsea, we couldn't play Lewis Hall against Chelsea.
The only one I was thinking of was Lewis Hall there, Chris. That's the only one I was thinking of before there who could actually be in the side. But I think Miley was given more minutes. He was also given minutes as well against Borussia Dortmund, wasn't he, in the away leg? So how is sort of gradually introducing him? I know Lewis Hall did well away to Man United, but I think out of the pair of them at the moment, especially with what he did on Saturday, I think he goes in that line. I think Hall will figure at some stage in the match for sure. As he wasn't able to select. So it's either one or the other. Is how going to go for his rotation of you played brilliantly on Saturday, but you played on Saturday. I'm resting you for a bit of a time. You will figure in some stage, but I'm starting with Hall. That could be an option. But that's the only thing that I'm thinking of is maybe a change to the lineup that you've got there, really, Chris. I think your front three, that's as strong as we can get at the moment. It's great that Isak's back and he scored as well yesterday. It's going to be interesting as well who comes off the park, comes on in the second half. What options do we have really that's going to come on? I mean, I think I heard rumours that Martin Dubravka, he played as an outfield player growing up. Is there an option that he could be converted to help us through this crisis, this injury crisis until we get to Christmas? But, given that, the great job Howe's done at converting players like Joe Linton, etc., and changing positions. But I think, my question would be to you guys as well, who are going to bring off the bench if the game gets stretched in the second half and we want to change things about, really?
Do you know what, Keith? Just before we go to Pete, because Pete can answer that question, but Foxy made an interesting point. Foxy said, I can't see how playing the same three up top, especially when we have Man United next. Think how goes defensive, slow the game down and waste time. But my question to you, Pete, and obviously what Keith's asked as well, the trouble is, if we don't play that same front three, who's going to play? Because I'm struggling to see who's going to play, unless he means maybe West Gordon play Lewis Hall up there. I don't know, but
that's the from when we know who's available, that's kind of the only option, because against Chelsea we had 3 goalkeepers on the bench. We had 4 goalkeepers in the whole squad for Chelsea. 3 goalkeepers on the bench, 3 academy players, and then I think there was Richie and Dummett. That's all we literally had available now. So we don't have another option. This is the whole point, and I agree. Like, we don't have anyone else. So this team is the team that we go with because there's nobody else. And that was going to be my second point, is that are there going to be any surprises potentially? So I think someone in the chat has just mentioned, Craig Lee has mentioned, I fancy Longstaff will be fit, possibly another. Reckon we had players 50-50 and he didn't want to risk them. I think that's a really good point to consider off the back of that. We know that Longstaff was one of them that potentially could have made it. Maybe Willock getting injured has maybe made him rethink that and go, you know what, let's give him an extra few days. He might well be ready to get some minutes under his belt. You've got Lewis Hall back, obviously, that we've talked about. And then, could there be another surprise? Could there be a Harvey Barnes on the bench? Nobody's really talked about him. And he was asked the question, and he was really coy with his answer with regards to Harvey Barnes. Could he be the one? Remember, there's rumours being that his projected fitness was always meant to be for the 2nd of December against Man United. But could it be that he's ready now to maybe play a bench role, get 10 or 15 minutes to build his fitness up, ready to then go and maybe play more minutes at the weekend against Man United? Could that be like a nice kind of ease in from that perspective? There's just a 2 to throw out there, really.
Am I allowed to throw Sven Botman up there as well?
Well, yeah. I was watching back, and I was thinking, obviously not a first team ready player, but Javier Manquillo won. He had a similar groin injury to Isak. Could he be ready? But then there's this Sven Botman. Sven Botman, I don't think, and I think you said this yesterday, Chris, and I agree with you. I don't think he's too far away.
No,
I don't. I think within the next 2 or 3 games, I think we see Sven Botman, and I think it's down to Eddie Howe making that decision, saying, right, okay, you're ready. I think he wants him ready to come straight back in the team, not to be ready to kind of come off the bench and do a kind of ease in. I think they're going to want him to come back in and play. So maybe that could be a potential option there.
Pete, just as an added one as well, will Eddie Howe want to try and get as many players on the bench as he can? So, the likes of Dummett, the likes of Richie and players like that, so that if, God forbid, but if we're getting tonked 3-0 and it comes to the 65th minute, is he going to go, like, get Isak off, get Gordon off, get Bruno off, because the game's gone kind of thing? Is that what Eddie Howe's going to be thinking, do you think?
He kind of did that away at Dortmund. He kind of did the same. Like when the second goal went in, he kind of went with 1 or 2 players. I think it might have been Joe Linton or 1 or 2 others. He just kind of went like, let's save you. let's say, for Bournemouth, and did it that. So that could potentially be the same. So yeah, that could be an option there. But Lee, there was a point here made from Foxy as well. Foxy's obviously well scattered with his European and South American football. Mbappe, Ramos, Dembele, Moani, and Martini all scored Friday. Totally different game away in Paris. Hopefully, we can snatch a result of some kind. Like, are you in agreement with Foxy? Obviously, all those players scored. So we've talked about how much they're firing. Is that what you think? Is it going to be a completely different proposition that we're coming up against? This.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's going to be a different game. PSG are a completely different team at home. You just got to look at their record. They're pretty atrocious away from home, especially in Europe. But at home, again, they've not even conceded a goal at home. Swept away Dortmund, swept away AC Milan 3-0. And, obviously it's important that they get that win on Tuesday, purely because the final game is in Dortmund, and we know that they're really bad travellers, generally bad travellers, PSG. So it's absolutely key, these home games for PSG. The park will be absolutely insane on Tuesday. And you always know when it's a big game. Literally, as soon as Newcastle, the full-time whistle went at Newcastle, PSG's against Chelsea, I should say, at the weekend, PSG's social media team were out. And whenever they throw a hashtag in for an upcoming game, you know it's a big game. And their hashtag was Début pour Paris, which is stand up for Paris. And they literally sent emails out to all season ticket holders, all across their socials, about getting behind and getting in that stadium on Tuesday and getting behind the team. They've sent out videos of previous games where, the crowd have really affected the team and got behind the team, and how positive results have happened, games against like Liverpool in the past. So they're really going out on this one because they know how big this is. We've had Vitinha, Dembele both come out after the Monaco game on Friday and said, we cannot wait for this game against Newcastle. And I think for them, it's a bit of redemption, because PSG don't lose Champions League group games, by the way, and they don't lose them in that fashion. They don't get thrashed in that fashion. That was a real, that was something that really doesn't ever happen to PSG. They've embarrassed themselves in the knockout stages enough, and I should know because I've been there. But honestly, what happened at Newcastle never happens to PSG in the group stage. So there is a real overriding feeling that they're going to get the job done this time, and they're really looking forward to it. All the players this is the one that they've had their eye on for a while. This Newcastle home game, and they just know how important it is, because this team cannot drop into Europa League. It cannot come fourth. It has to go through. It has to go through to the next stage of the Champions League. And they've lost a lot of quality this year. They are playing a different style of football. They've lost Messi. They've lost Neymar. They've lost Verratti. They've lost countless others. That's an incredible amount of talent and creativity. And, of course, there's still plenty of quality in that squad. But regardless, when you lose that kind of talent, and you've got enough, you're ballsy enough to offload those types of players, you've got to be sure that you're doing the right thing. You've got to be sure that the quality that you're bringing in can make up for that in some way. But honestly, it's this is the game everybody wants, from the fans to the players. They're really, really pumped up for this game. It's huge. It's going to be a huge game for PSG. So whilst this might be big for Newcastle, in Paris, they're absolutely pumped for this.
Okay, so just really quickly, where do you think PSG are going to hurt Newcastle? What's their style of play? Where are they going to target Newcastle United to get the win?
They're going to have to match Newcastle's. You're going to have to match them in terms of being aggressive. They're going to have to be as they're going to have to press and be as aggressive as Newcastle. They're going to have to, the park, everybody in the park, 49,000 fans are going to have to play their part in it as well, and they will, because they've got their ultras. They're going to have all the banners. They're going to, it's going to be loud and noisy. But on the pitch, I think that PSG are in a much better, stronger, and much better form than they were going into the Newcastle game. We noticed when Mbappe played at St. James's Park, he had 3 players instantly around him. I think that'll be a little bit different this time. I think that Mbappe will just try and create more space, find spaces to, even just to get a yard, half a yard, and try and really kind of use his pace to get past Trippier. As well as Jamal Lascelles played that night, by the way. And props to him for this renaissance that he's going to. I think he deserves all the credit in the world, from going from an outcast to playing Champions League games. Fair play to him. But I think there'll be a different Ugarte, Fabian Ruiz, who was fantastic Friday night. You've got to match Bruno and Joelinton. We've got to match just how strong and aggressive. And I know I keep using that word aggressive but that's how Newcastle beat PSG, by being aggressive and just absolutely wiping the floor with them. I know I'm saying that word a lot, but they've got to match that now. But I think that forward line, I think those two wide areas there, Dembele, Mbappe, Mukiele and Hakimi overlapping, and certainly moving, joining into attacks, but also making sure, they get back and tuck in when needed. I think that's where them wide areas are where PSG can really, really hurt Newcastle. But on the flip side, I'd probably say that it's the same for Newcastle. Those wide areas, the Gordon, the Almiron, that's where they can hurt PSG too. So these wide areas, these forward, these almost kind of forward wingers, almost, they kind of play such hybrid roles these days, don't they? But I think they're going to be key on both sides, definitely. And I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. I think it's going to be a really intriguing game.
Definitely. I think it will. I think, looking from a team point of view, you've talked about this area here. This midfield battle is going to, I think, be the difference. They will definitely go to war, this three. Miley can put himself about. He's 17 years old, but he's not shy in putting an attack and getting stuck in. I think we're better equipped here with Tino Livramento. Chris, you touched on it there. This for me is the interesting battle.
Yeah.
And not because of lack of quality for me. And I watched it at St. James's Park. It's just pace. The pace, whether it was Dembele switching sides last time with Mbappe, it was too much at times. The Trippier is the type of guy that he likes to get forward into these areas. He likes to get in here. And the great thing about that is that Mbappe, he doesn't track back. So he comes in here and there's an overlap here, which brings in Ugarte, and it did that quite a lot. But what you find is when the move breaks down, he's in. And he's in there, and he exposed it. Certainly in the first 3 or 4 minutes, time and time again. Ousmane Dembele did the same with Dan Burn. And I think that's where we're well equipped to deal with it there. I'm just worried that, as you said, Lee, Kylian Mbappe is going to get more time. He's going to get more opportunity to create those little pockets of space that could potentially hurt Newcastle. So that's something I'm worried about. But I do think Bruno Guimaraes playing further forward for Newcastle, he can provide the killer pass. When he's further deeper, particularly against better teams, it's harder for him to make that pass. But I think him arriving in these areas with the ball, whether it's a counter-attack or not, because he likes to get forward, he's got the ability on the board. He's the one in our midfield that can play a ball into Isak, that can create problems. Miley proved it on Saturday too, but he's the consistent guy. And I think he is going to be the one that PSG are going to have to stop if they are going to win that midfield battle. Gordon, against Dortmund, sort of both games, he wasn't great. So this is an opportunity for him to put in a top performance away from home. Miguel Almiron will always be a threat because he'll just run all day. He will run all day and try and create those spaces. But it's going to be really, really interesting. We are going to be under the cosh quite a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But if we get the first goal and we've got something to hold on to, I can see it. I'm not saying that we're going to win, but I can see us maybe getting something from the game, because that's where Eddie Howe potentially would change it up. But Chris, anything to add?
No, I don't think so, mate. I think like the Chelsea game, and I think Pochettino spoke about it afterwards, the wing backs feel key again. And I know we say that a lot, and not just our full backs, but also PSG's. You've got Hakimi, Gordon, I think that'll be a huge battle. And then obviously, no doubt, Livramento, Dembele, Trippier, Mbappe. They're all difficult. And I think it's interesting as well with Mukulele and Almiron. And it all depends on where the support comes from. Joe Linton and Bruno further forward, but they will also need to sit back, cut back into those positions to help the wing backs, and obviously put more pressure on the PSG wing backs. So it's kind of it's an all action job. I don't envy them because they must half get some kilometers in playing these games.
Definitely. Miley or Bruno's going to have to come in and do a job here. I think it's going to be Miley because we know what Bruno's recovery runs are like. They're not always great. So I think what you'll find is when you're attacking PSG or attacking, Miley will come into here to double up, and Bruno will sit in the middle here and maybe monitor Vitinha in that situation. But that's one thing we're going to have to be mindful of. And we will sit in parts of the game like this, and we'll look for Bruno on the break. He'll come in as a 3 to stop Mbappe, and these will be isolated at times, but there'll be a risk of a counter attack. Just really quickly, Keith, anything to add before we get some questions for Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I agree with everything Chris is saying. Certainly, it's going to be a red hot atmosphere for sure on Tuesday. And if you look at them, 3 away trips: Milan, Dortmund, and now Paris, all 3 red hot atmospheres with, unique animated fans, really. So it's going to be, I mean, what an opportunity. It'll have to be, the ultimate hatchet job, really. It's going to have to be some sort of incredible feat to get a result. I think Isak could be key, and it's great to see Isak back in the side and get a goal, really. He could be the element of surprise, really, on the night, really. And could be a difference maker on the night. Just one question: Do you just about Emil Kraft? Do you think Emil Kraft's been unfortunate recently not to figure more? I mean, he did play for Sweden recently and really get a look in.
I think someone put it in the chat. I think Manquillo, Kraft, and I think Richie are not in the Champions League squad.
Right.
So I think yeah, someone put it in there. So they could potentially have been options, but they won't be for that reason. But yeah, I think it would have been a decent option to have to come in from a defensive point of view later on in the game, especially if we had something to hold on to. But we'll see from that point, and let's see how the tactics fall out. Now, Lee, I know you've got to go in a second, so we'll just throw a couple of questions at you before you have to leave, if that's all right. Anything in there that stands out, Chris, that we can throw at Lee?
Let's see. I mean, I love this one. I've got to come to this one. So Ian McKenna asked Lee, what's the worst Christmas present Pete's ever got you? I love the force.
He's quite good. He's quite good, No, he's all right. He sorts me out.
You're the hardest person to buy for. I say that to you every year. You're the hardest person to buy for.
That's what my partner says. I'm just the worst to buy for.
They got yourselves a Leicester top.
Leicester top.
You ever bought yourselves a Leicester top?
You having a laugh? You got no chance.
No, it's not happening. It's not happening.
Also, some clappers. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh God, those blooming clappers! Oh my goodness, man! I don't even have to do them anymore. I haven't been down there this season, so I don't even have to do them anymore. But, oh God, Jesus Christ, they're awful, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. David Cook, actually, any whispers from France for the January transfer window? Nearly one.
Obviously, we spoke about Ekitike, didn't we? I think he's going to be one of the big movers there. Not quite yet. It's all. I think PSG are looking to do a little bit of business, nothing connected to the Premier League as of yet. But no, nothing yet. I think certainly as we get into next month and just kind of edge towards that transfer window, I think there'll be a few more rumours flying around. I know they've already kind of started in the Premier League, but there'll be a few more rumours, I think, flying around as we move into December, ready for the winter window. But nothing really yet. No, it's pretty quiet.
I'm going to put you on the spot really very slightly, just for a second. Are there any players that really stood out for you in League 1 this season?
Well, we kind of had that one, but
yeah. There's some really good points. A guy at Lorient called Eli Junior Kroupi, Kroupi. Worth looking at. Scored again for Lorient today, although they lost against Metz. He's a great young forward. I think he's 17. Low bags of talent, very raw, but making a real good impression in France this year. So with him, obviously the standout is Warren Zaïre, but nobody's getting him. But hopefully he'll sign a new contract when he get, at the moment he's obviously out injured. Trying to think off the top of my head as well. It's a league of young talents, isn't it? This is where they get their break, and obviously a lot of them head off to Spain, a lot of them to England. But yeah, there's some really good young talents coming through as always. So all you got to do is look at the French national squad, even look at the under-21s. Very, very, very talented, full of lots of depth in France out there. And they all get a chance at very young age, don't they, to develop. So by the time they're 19, 20, they're totally geared for moving on to another league. So, but yeah, there's certainly Kroupi over at Lorient. He's probably the standout this season. He's been really good.
Who's been your player of the Champions League so far, Lee? Or who's impressed you? If you've seen one player and thought
in the Champions League. In the Champions League, there's been some really good performances. I think Lautaro Martinez is doing really good at Inter. I think he's having a great season. He's just scored this evening against Juventus. I think he's been a standout player this year for Inter. They're my outside tip to win it, by the way. Inter Milan, yeah, they're my outside tip to win it. They're a really good side and went close against Man City. So yeah, obviously Haaland's still banging them in, isn't he? As well. And Mbappe's been pretty good, except for obviously that defeat at St James's Park. He's performed really well. Jude Bellingham is, he's been fantastic. How can you look past Jude at Real Madrid? Again, really talented player who's just having an absolutely fabulous season. But again, probably those players I would say have been the standout ones in the Champions League so far. We'll see which ones of them get near the end and potentially win it at Wembley.
I'm just mindful. I was looking at the live show, not the actual time, and I know you've stayed on longer than you anticipated. So if you do need to go, I'll let you go because I know you're still on the clock and still doing some bits.
Yeah, it's my Sunday night Ligue 1 duties I do the Ligue 1 review for the Ligue1.com. So I have a few duties I have to do before I can hit the sack, unfortunately. So a few things to do on the Sunday night. But always obviously wanted to come and join you guys. Big game on Tuesday, and I know you're all excited as much as I am. So it's going to be an interesting one. Shame you're not going to be joining me, Pete.
I'm gutted.
Yeah, shame you're not
it was all planned, and then work got in the way and denied me at the last minute. But
I'm sure there'll be a few Geordies on my Eurostar on Tuesday. I'm expecting a few over there, definitely. So I'm sure I'll be able to catch up with a few over there. But looking forward to getting there. It's going to be an interesting one, really interesting. I'm expecting a great atmosphere, thousands of Georges. I'm sure there's loads traveling over, even without tickets. So I'm sure the atmosphere just around the city is going to be really, really good. Should be really good fun over there.
100%. Just a quick prediction before you head off.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I think this could go either way. I think it could be a draw. I think PSG could win, and I think Newcastle can win there as well, just because the way Newcastle play, it's literally hell. It's literally hell for PSG the way they play. But I think PSG are going to get over the line this time. I do think PSG are going to nick it. I'm going to go for 2-1 because I did say before I could see Newcastle scoring. So I think PSG are going to nick this one. I really do. Which would secure qualification for the next round. But look, it could go either way. If I was to catch up with you in January or whenever, and Newcastle have won at the Park, then it honestly wouldn't surprise me either. So it could go either way, and I think that's what's so intriguing and so exciting about this game. I think it's going to be really, really, really enticing. I can't wait. Even if I was watching it on TV, I'll be really looking forward to sitting down and watching. So yeah. Absolutely. It's going to be great. Quality.
Pleasure as always, Lee. I'll let you go.
No worries.
Need to do. But yeah, enjoy the game. Make sure you send me some bids and picks. You know the score. Let us know. But and we'll probably get you back. Well, I say probably we will get you back on January because it'll be the
no problem.
But
Thanks,
take care for
guys.
now.
Absolute
Enjoy.
pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care, Lee.
Cheers.
See you later, mate.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Later. Great to have Leon and his opinions. I always keep him over the time. Like I was looking at the live time and not the real time, and I was thinking, I've already kept him like 7-8 minutes over the time limit. I was like, damn it. Wanted to keep him bang on because I know he's still working away before he has to switch off for the night. But yeah, thank you, Luke. This is why we get him on, because he knows his stuff, and I'm lucky enough to have grown up around him and listen to him and see how he kind of observes his football, and so him coming on here talking about Liga, Premier League, whatever league, it doesn't surprise me because he's the reason why I watch European football the way I do. So great to have him on, and look, no doubt he'll be back, especially if we're linked to any French-based players. I'm sure we'll get him back on to talk all things Newcastle United. But any questions from us before we go to predictions?
David Cook says, and David Cook put this in the chat earlier about Kraft, and I think the ones he mentioned were Kraft, Manquillo, and there was somebody else, and he said they can't play. Richie, yeah, and he was saying, do we have enough registered players to fill the bench? It's a good question. I think the bench could contain a lot of kids. Let me see. Is there anything else? David Tofield come up with an interesting one, saying, "Would we play Dubravka as a sweeper keeper? So maybe not an outfield player, but maybe as a sweeper keeper because he is more of a sweeper keeper than Nick Pope. I don't know. Is Nick Pope guaranteed to start, lads? For me, he probably will. But do you both agree with that?
What do you think, Keith?
It's just that Dubravka hasn't really played many games, has he, this season? How many has he played? Has he just played the one so far for Newcastle this season?
Old Trafford, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. If he'd have figured a few more, like if he'd have figured in, I don't know, if he'd have figured in a couple, like both League Cup matches and maybe one of the Champions League matches or something, maybe I'd be close to that. But it is an interesting option, an interesting suggestion. But I just think Pope's been in such good form, hasn't he? Really, why would you change it up?
I don't know. I know we've already. Oh, sorry. Go on, Pete.
Well, I was going to say, I actually think Pope's a better sweeper keeper than Dubravka. Dubravka tends to stay on his line. Yeah, I think that was part of the big thing as why, because Pope likes to come off his line. Sometimes you think to yourself, please stay on your line. Dubravka tends to. Dubravka uses his box well, but
he's better with his feet to Dubravka and receiving the ball. For me, anyway. I feel when the ball goes back to Dubravka, I feel more comfortable. When the ball goes back to Pope, I think, just don't dilly-dally on it. A bit like Alisson of late, really. I don't think he's great on the ball, even though he may look all right. He's a bit dodgy. His timekeeping is not great.
I would agree with you in terms of receiving the ball, definitely. I don't think Dubravka's distribution is any better than Pope's.
No, it's not. His distribution is not better.
It's more comfortable receiving. But Pope was comfortable receiving up until the Liverpool sending off. That knocked him for 6. Pope wasn't the same player after that point. Just want to give a shout out, put it at the bottom, smash the like button. I'm not sure how many likes we've got at the moment. I'll check it, but look, we've had 130, 140, maybe 150 when I last looked. If you haven't already, click the like. Let's get well over 100 likes right now, and help out the channel. Get us up there, and all the algorithms and everything that we already mentioned, because it helps the channel no end. So thank you for your continued support. Currently on 60 likes. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. We had 10 new subs last night. Let's try and see if we can get to 10 subs tonight, and keep building the channel as always. And obviously the blaze is ablazing. That's for sure. Yeah, poke shot stopping is better than Dubravka, so
Yes.
could well come in. Yeah, it's crazy. Now on 60 plus, so we're working our way up there. But everyone just click like right now. There we go. We're already heading towards 70, just within a second. So yeah, keep supporting the channel. Anything for us? Question wise, Chris, before we come to predictions.
Not really. I mean, I know Seb asked about how concerned are we with Villa, but I just worried that we may go off into a big tangent there. Me personally, I'm not that concerned with Villa, Seb. I think they're a good side. I don't doubt that, and I think Emery's got them playing nice football. But for me, I do think they'll drop off, and I think all it takes, a bit like Tottenham when we were discussing this a few weeks ago, all it takes is 2 or 3 injuries, and I think Villa are in trouble. If they lost like a Watkins and a Douglas Luiz and a Pau Torres, or someone of that ilk, anyway, I think they'd start getting found out.
Our team's better than Villa's. Simple as that. You ask yourself the question, Seb. If Villa had the same amount of injuries that we had this season, how would they have got on there? You've got to remember, and I think we all have to remember, Villa have done really well this season and are doing well. But they're navigating themselves through a Europa Conference League where they don't have to play all their top stars. They can rest 2 or 3 and give them a rest on a Thursday evening against a team that nobody really knows. And they've tried to do that and still only just scrape through wins. You know, our squad's better. We're having to navigate ourselves not only through a Champions League season, but the group of death in the Champions League. Not only are we having to navigate ourselves through a Carabao Cup where we've had to play Man City, Man United, and now Chelsea. We have had the toughest of tough of everything. We had the hardest start of everybody else, and we're still within touching distance, 5 points of Aston Villa. When we get our players back and we've got the options that we had at the beginning of the season available to us, we will be fine. I know for a fact we're going to have a really good second half of the season with additions as well. No doubt about it. But Villa are playing well. But equally, you guys watched it. I watched it. They could have been 4-0 down after 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Spurs blitzed them and probably should have had the game wrapped up before they eventually scored, and then Villa ended up getting the goal back and nicking the win. Well, props to Villa. We did something similar in games last season, but I do think that it will catch up to them at some point. You look at the Forest defeat away from home. Their away form isn't great, not too much better than ours. And they're relying heavily on their home form. And at some point, it has to narrow out if you want to challenge for the top 4. I believe ours will narrow out and we will start getting wins away from home. I'm not convinced about that. That's my opinion.
Keith?
Yeah, I'll sort of echo those sentiments, really. I think that Villa have just got a slightly better away form than Newcastle have, for sure. That was an impressive win today. I think, agree with the points. Newcastle, certainly in the second half of the season, with a few acquisitions on loan, it's going to be a big second half of the season. And let's say Newcastle go out of the Champions League before the new year, and let's say haven't got that to worry about in the second half of the season. It clears the way to focus on a good push for the Champions League in the second half. Villa might go deep in the Europa League Conference League. That could be a distraction. They might have a couple on themselves, which sort of takes them off. A couple of injuries, it changes things. But I do feel that the away trip to Villa Park could be a crucial game, certainly in that run-in to the end of the season. But it's going to be interesting because Villa, really, you touched on there, Pete, about the hot form that they've been in. They are sort of where Newcastle are this time last year. Like when you mark where the form that they were in, they were the form side at the second half of last season, just like Newcastle were the season before. Yeah. And they've started brilliantly this season after the 5-1 thrashing on the opening day. They've had a brilliant start of the season. Emery does have form, and it's it's making things interesting. Sure, you've had Spurs who've had an improvement as well at the start of the season, and obviously there's Newcastle as well. So there's the top 6, top 7, top 8 battle is an interesting battle this season.
100%, I agree. Most definitely. It's an interesting one there. Jamie's just said Villa have got Bournemouth, Man City, and Arsenal in the next 3 games. So, whereas we've played Man City and Arsenal already, and we've got a win against Arsenal, and obviously we lost to Man City. You made a point, Keith. Villa at Villa Park will be a tough game, but as I mentioned last night on the show, on the reaction show, by the end of January, we'd have played Man City twice, Liverpool twice, and Villa at Villa Park twice. We'd have played all 3 of those teams and got them knocked out, and they're done for the season. Villa will still have those other teams to go to later on in the season. They'll still have another Man City to play against, another Arsenal to play against. When you're deep into a competition like the Conference League, when you've got games that are coming thick and fast, if you're in a cup competition, those games start to take their toll. Whereas we might be playing, I don't know, let's say, for example, a Fulham or somebody else, a Sheffield United or a Luton or whatever. They're playing against a top team. And the points can change very quickly. 5 points can change very quickly. We saw what happened with Liverpool. Liverpool were like 10, 12 points behind us. And all of a sudden, they're there. It can change very quickly. You just got to put a nice little run together. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried at all. We just need to keep focusing on ourselves and doing what we're doing.
And what I would say is regardless of what happens this season, there's been a lot of tests already, a lot of challenges, but Newcastle are going to reset at some stage. And, this is the first phase, and we were ahead of the curve last year and towards the end of the season before as well, really much further than where we thought we would be. Newcastle are going to reset, and they're going to go again, get that next level, just like they did when they were last in the ascendancy in the early 2000s and in the 90s as well, when they reset during those periods in the middle of those nice little runs that there were. So I'm not too worried about how this season goes.
No, definitely not. And Chris, quite rightly, hit the likes and subscribes. I think we're on to 70, 80 likes now. So let's get us up to that 100 as quickly as possible. Let's push us right up there right now. Let's get to predictions. What do we predict in the game Tuesday night at the Parc des Princes? PSG against Newcastle United. Chris, what are you? In fact, I'll go with what I'm going for first, and then I get your thoughts on it before we get to Keith. And I think it's going to be 2-2. James has put it on exactly the same time. He's put 2-2 for me. We're both going for the old Desmond. Yes, I said 2-2, and then he just put it. Literally just came up on the screen. I'm going for a 2-2. I think there's going to be goals in this game. 2-2. Take a point. I take a point all day. I take your point, snatch it, and get the hell out of France as quickly as possible. But that's just me. Chris, what are you thinking, fella?
I would take 2-2, but sadly I'm going to have to say 3-1 PSG. I think they're going to have too much for us. I don't want to say that. I don't want to think that, but realistically speaking, I think PSG will be so hyped for this game. It's not true. I think they will want a big revenge, and I think it will be a huge night, and I think that we will just come short. So I'm going to say 3-1. As much as I'd love a 2-2, I think it'll be 3-1 PSG.
Yeah. 3-1 PSG. And Keith, of course, everyone wants to know your prediction. There's definitely a little bit of leeway here with the game that we're coming up against. So what are your thoughts? What are you thinking?
When I look at this game in its most positive of light, so again, I'm just sort of going a little bit of heart and head, but most positive light, I think Newcastle are going to break their goal scoring duck away from home. They could do that. I think Isak could score. Element of surprise. I think Isak could score. Certainly, it'll be a thrilling game. I think with it's going to be a cracking atmosphere, a thrilling game. Isak will score. However, come 90 minutes, I think it'll be that, or as Chris said, it could be by a couple of goals, because I think this is going to be a very different game to the game at St. James's Park.
Yeah, it will be.
I think after these experiences away from home, Newcastle, it's going to be better for Newcastle in the long run. They're going to have learned so much. It's going to toughen them up. But I think this has got a different feel. I think there will be an edge of revenge about PSG. Nobody does that. So imagine what it was like when they came back, when they got off, when they got back to France with that feeling. That's going to be raw. They're going to be ready to go again. And I think, unfortunately, Newcastle's away form as well. They're not quite there yet in Europe, certainly. And I think that's why I give the game to PSG. Mbappe is going to be a different player on the night as well compared to the first leg. So,
yeah, no, more than right to say that 110%, because of how strong they are, and like you said, they are well on to kind of cause us some problems and get that almost revenge, isn't it? It's kind of like they are out for revenge up against us, but we will see. We will see. Just just to go back 1 second onto the away days tab, we're going to be talking all about it on Tuesday. Loaded Mag are going to be doing another watch along, seeing the game in. Hopefully, you'll get some screaming and celebrations on the show as Newcastle score maybe more than one goal. But we're going to be reliving it, live and reliving it after the game as we review it as well. So come and join us. Times at the start of the show are to be confirmed. To keep an eye on socials for that start time, but we will be doing a watch along for that game on Tuesday. And if you haven't already, check out the shows this week that's already been. A great show with Andy Sixsmith, a really, really top guy, a fantastic guest, and great knowledge on all things Newcastle United. And his interview with Eddie Howe that he did the next day was absolutely brilliant. As well as that, the man, the myth, the controversial legend, Sean Casey. If you haven't watched that show, brilliant show. Great chat and discussion about players and potential moves that we think might happen with Newcastle United in the January transfer window, and plenty more to come. So the predictions are in, guys. There's a number of predictions in there. Daz believes he's gone for 1-0 Newcastle United win. Kendo said Dr. Droom strikes again, and Bobby says Tino to shut down Mbappe. So yes, we would love for all of those things to happen, that's for sure. But look, great show, great to have you on. Click the likes and subscribes on the way out. Massive thanks to Keith for all of his fantastic stats and opinions and critiquing everything with regards to the Newcastle lineup. Obviously, thanks to Lee for his expertise and knowledge on PSG and French football in general. He'll be back soon. And of course, the main man, Mr. Chrissy Hall, for joining us and giving your opinions on the lineups and all things Newcastle United. Thank you to you in the chat. Brilliant stuff tonight. Pleasure as always. Put your predictions in if you haven't already on the way out, and we'll whack them up on the screen. But of course, let's hope for a positive result. And as always, we do love playing away. Have a great night, everyone. Chris, take us out.
How'd you like that?
Boom.
Drink it.